It was just a projection for 2009, but the numbers are in now, and according to Strategy Analytics, they're even higher. More than 1 billion application downloads last year alone in the United States, and that is simply amazing. Apps are helping drive smartphone growth, and the addition of new app stores by Android, Palm, Microsoft, and others will only help to accelerate that growth. Carriers also have stepped forward to broaden app distribution. Last month in Barcelona, the Wholesale Application Community Consortium was announced. 24 carriers with 3 billion customers worldwide have committed to help develop a simpler app distribution plan, and this will make downloading of apps even easier for consumers. There are also efforts to expand apps usage in non-smartphone devices. In January, AT&T and Qualcomm announced a program that will help spur growth in mid-range devices. And Sprint with GetJar have plans to drive app growth in feature phones. Mobile broadband is also crucial for the next wave of growth for the wireless industry, emerging devices, and machine-to-machine connected devices. This area is one other area of U.S. leadership and a tremendous growth opportunity as well. By 2014, the U.S. expects about 86 million emerging devices to be connected to our networks, up 10x from 2008. That's expected to be about a quarter of the connected emerging devices in the world. And also by 2014, some estimate that the market for wirelessly enabled devices to hit $39 billion in the U.S. alone. Every emerging device category shows tremendous potential. For example, in the fourth quarter of last year, U.S. led the world in e-book downloads with 34% of the world's downloads. On the business side, the potential is even more jaw-dropping. Machine-to-machine growth is expected in almost every industry, to more than 400 million devices by 2014. I talked earlier about the way these devices will change the way we work, but there's more, much more. Mobile broadband is driving productivity. The U.S. has the highest percentage of mobile workers today and is expected to reach 75% by 2013. U.S. businesses are increasingly depending on mobile communications and applications. Spending is expected to grow more than 20% annually through 2012. And industry analyst IDC believes in 2010 will be a watershed year for mobile devices for enterprise as 1 billion access the internet worldwide. Everywhere you look in business or in your personal life, you're seeing the impact of mobile broadband. In almost every way of looking at it, the U.S. is leading the way. But there are no guarantees that it will stay that way, which brings me to the second part of our discussion. We are at a critical point in our industry. Past success is no guarantee of the future. What we do in the next few years will determine our success and whether we retain our current leadership in mobile broadband. Let me show you a slide that shows how the wireless ecosystem works. The U.S. wireless industry is a virtuous cycle of investment and innovation. This cycle begins with spectrum, which is the lifeblood of this industry. Once spectrum is available and advanced networks are built, innovative devices are then developed to work on these networks. These smarter devices then lead to a proliferation of application, which in turn leads to increased consumer demand for more spectrum. Expansion of wireless also drives significant investment in fiber and expands wireline broadband at the same time it expands mobile broadband. I'm proud to say this virtuous cycle works exceptionally well in the United States. This cycle works so well that it acts like an ecosystem with each component dependent on and driving every other. When the ecosystem is in balance, the virtuous cycle never stops and demand continues. We're seeing unprecedented demand by consumers, which puts us right back in the starting gate of spectrum. As CTIA stated in a filing with the FCC today, consumers have gotten a taste of what U.S. mobile broadband ecosystem can deliver, and now their appetite seems unlimited. How big is that appetite? Well, let's take a look at the next chart. It's a chart that Cisco put together. Everyone knows that data is growing by leaps and bounds, and that rate of growth is not expected to abate when you look at any reasonable forecast. Cisco projects global mobile traffic demand to increase 40 times between last year and 2014 to 3.6 million terabytes per month. As CTIA told the FCC, mobile broadband growth already outpaces every other broadband platform, with net adds greater than DSL and cable combined. Pew Research estimates that by 2010, mobile devices will be the primary internet devices for most people in the world. To give you an idea of what's driving this, look at the rise of smartphones. According to Cisco, the average smartphone user generates 10 times the amount of traffic generated by non-smartphone users. A single YouTube video consumes 100 times the bandwidth of a voice call. In fact, video is expected to be 2/3 of mobile broadband traffic by 2014, according to Cisco. But you know what? That's exactly what mobile broadband is all about. Consumers flock to it and love it. It's not a question of demand skyrocketing. We already know that. It's a question of how we will deal with this demand. That brings us to the imperatives facing our industry and what we can do to help meet that demand. The first thing we need to understand is that there is no silver bullet, no single answer to meeting the demand for mobile broadband. The National Broadband Plan released by the FCC last week recommends 6 goals, one of which is that the U.S. should lead the world in mobile innovation with the fastest and the most extensive wireless networks of any nation. And I agree. But I would add the word continue to lead in mobile innovation, since I've shown you our leadership here this morning. But we do need to find sustainable models that meet this demand while allowing industry participants to realize the growth and potential profits resulting from our continued investment in technologies. Here are some of the keys to developing a sustainable model, and they include increasing additional spectrum, accelerating network efficiencies, capitalizing on complementary technologies, and ensuring application efficiencies. Let's take a look at what the industry is up against. Take a look at the next chart, which takes an illustrative look at the network demand for mobile broadband versus network capacity. All of us have our own versions of this, but most look generally the same. The red line shows increased peak network demand over time. Right under that is the blue line that shows network capacity. As you can see, the sweeping growth of demand threatens the capacity to meet it. It's hard to predict when it will happen, but without the industry taking steps to meet this demand, no one doubts that it will. While this chart is illustrative, it is clear that the crossover point is fast approaching. We need to move quickly to make sure we don't ever reach that point. The first thing to look at is spectrum. As FCC Chairman Janikowski said, the looming spectrum crisis represents the greatest threat to mobile broadband in this country. And in its report to the FCC, CTIA said that we need 800 megahertz of additional spectrum to meet projected demand. The good news is that the FCC already has begun to take steps to address this, the first key to a sustainable model. Here you see the increased benefits of new spectrum in the shaded area stepped up over time as new spectrum comes online. We applaud the FCC proposal to free 500 megahertz of new spectrum, but it will likely be years before the spectrum is available, even if the FCC moves at a record pace. Consumer demand is not going to wait. And even with additional spectrum, that's not enough. That's why we need to take other steps now. The second key to doing this is to go through greater technological efficiencies. The next generation of wireless technology will help us to do that. So let's take a look at the next chart, which is also illustrative.